everyone. Welcome to Therapy Entrepreneurs, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest, Robyn Midgley. She's a European certified and British accredited hand therapist. Robyn, she lives and works in South Africa. She's an entrepreneur. She runs her own clinic. So Robyn also developed a hand course. It's called CMMS online course for breaking down the joint stiffness and hand stiffness. Robyn also developed a platform to educate patients on hand therapy and hand surgery, and it's called Hand Consult. And I would love to talk to Robyn today about her, route to becoming a hand therapist, becoming an entrepreneur, and developing these courses. Hi, Robyn, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Dimitri. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited. So, Robyn, before we start talking about your practice, about your course, so how did you become an occupational therapist, and how did you become a hand therapist? When did this happen, and how?
So when I was about 13 years old, I met this incredible occupational therapist. Her name was Jenny Lukowski. So my brother was 9 years younger than me at the time, and he was going to her for sensory integration. And I used to go to all his therapy sessions, and I absolutely loved her. And she was so knowledgeable. She was so vibrant. She was enthusiastic. And I just thought, I want to be her. And so I actually spent about a year in therapy with him. I used to go to all the sessions, and then as soon as I got into OT school, I spent time with her throughout my undergraduate. But she always said to me, you probably won't become a pediatric therapist. You must go out there and work in a hospital, in a clinic, in a big team, and you'll find your niche. And sure enough, I never went into peds, and I went into hands. I think the hand bug bit when I was in fourth year. I had an incredible lecturer. Her name was Kathy Wondrum. And just the whole way she taught hands, and the whole, she almost had a finesse about it. And again, she became my idol, and I thought, I want to be Kathy. And so as soon as I qualified, I engineered my practice towards specializing in hands, and I've never looked back.
Very, very interesting. And Robyn, and so when did you get your certificate? Tell me it's not in America, in the United States, it's CHT, and you guys have what are the credentials there?
So I did it's called a BSc honors degree, which was a 4-year degree. And that's considered my undergraduate. So I qualified in 1997. And then I went to work at what is called it's called Baragwanath Hospital. It's actually the biggest or the tallest, it's not the tallest, I'll tell you about that. It's the biggest hospital in the world in the Guinness Book of Records. It's based in Soweto on the outskirts of Johannesburg, and you see multiple trauma there. And I spent 2 years there. And then I went to London, and I worked in the tallest hospital in the world, which is Guy's Hospital in London Bridge. So I got to work in the biggest and the tallest hospitals in the world. So that's a little bit of my claim to fame.
Interesting. So how many years were you working in a hospital prior to deciding to become a clinic owner?
Okay, so I went to London. I left South Africa and I went to work in London in 2000. In 2002, I got my job at Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital in London. And I think I was extremely fortunate at that stage because I was working with renowned surgeons. And how it worked in London is that the surgeons would have an NHS practice and a private practice. And I got to work with the same surgeon and start a very small private practice in the evenings. At a private clinic, which was literally across the car park, and I think that was just amazing because in South Africa, therapists tend to qualify and then open up a private practice, and they're very much on their own. Whereas I just wanted to learn and be part of a huge team and work with people who were better than me and who were way better than me. So I was always felt like I had to aspire and become better. And so I spent 10 years at that hospital, and I grew this mini private practice, and I actually started hand therapy consulting in 2003. And then when I came back to South Africa 10 years ago, I opened up hand therapy consulting in South Africa. So I did both for 10 years, and that was amazing.
Okay, very good. They say it takes 10,000 hours to become a professional. So I agree with you. You got to really put in that work prior to, open up your own practice. You got to see a lot of hands in order to be competent. Very good. So Robyn, so who were influencers in hand therapy and in entrepreneurship? Did you have a mentor in both, or how did you go about opening up your private practice? What resources did you use?
Well, I had the most phenomenal boss at Guy's Hospital. Her name is Elizabeth McLennan, and she gave me so much freedom to grow as a person and as a professional. And what I liked about working at Guy's and St. Thomas's is that we were supervised every second week. I mean, proper clinical supervision where you brought your cases to the table and you discussed them. We had to set learning objectives for the year. We had to meet those objectives. We had to ensure that we would be impacting, in the hand therapy world and attending national and international conferences. So I think from the word go, I had Elizabeth as my mentor. But she was also running an enormous department where there were 60 therapists and, well, even probably more, because there were 35 hand therapists. So there were probably 80 therapists underneath her. Wow. And she personally knew everybody, but also the hospital was run like a business. You almost had to, like in private practice, you had to earn your money and you had to get out there and meet the business objectives in order for the budget to be provided. And so we started to grow this incredible hand unit, and we started extended scope clinics, and she taught me how to conduct myself, in big committees with the powers that be that were going to be the stakeholders who made decisions. And she taught me how to do business proposals. So I think I learned from her how to be a businesswoman within an institution, with the safety net of an institution. And even in the private practice that I ran for the hospital, there was income that was generated from me seeing those private patients that came into the department, because how it would work was that the private medical aids would pay me and the hospital.
Interesting. That's an interesting concept. Okay.
So the hospital fee would come in, and Liz and I would then set our big dreams in terms of what equipment we wanted and needed. And so we started purchasing the E-Link and, all those incredible, ultrasound machines and, lots of equipment. Never mind that, electronic tables that I could, with the press of a button, I could adjust my table height up and down so it suited me and my patient. And I just had the best for 10 years. And I think for example, if a patient put in a complaint as well, she taught me how to respond to a complaint. And that is huge, because you can't please all the people all the time, and they're going to be challenging situations. So, I would say that she was my first mentor in terms of the entrepreneur space.
Okay, interesting. Very good. And so you mentioned that you started evenings, right, after your main job in the hospital. And how long did it last? How long were you actually working part-time until you made it a full-time thing?
So only when I came back to South Africa. So in 2010, I fell pregnant with my son, and my husband said, look, we've had an amazing time in London, but I think we should go back home and be with family. And honestly, I was just devastated, because I wanted to say I was at the pinnacle of my career. I was running therapy-led and extended scope clinics. We were running diagnostic clinics. I was working with the best surgeons and the most incredible team. And I felt I had energy and I didn't want to, although having said that, for the past 10 years, I had been purchasing my equipment for a private practice. I purchased the E-Link, which was, you know, R250,000, for example. So it was a big piece of equipment, but because I had it at Guy's and St. Thomas's, I decided I had to have it in a private practice. So I think intuitively, I'd always known I would be a practice owner. But I just really loved that. So yes, I had to rip off that Band-Aid. We had to come back. I had my son. And then I opened up hand therapy consulting in Johannesburg. And then that was a new challenge and a new chapter. And I think he was right. It was the right call for our son because I could work half day. We had both sets of grandparents. And, you know, I could be a mom. And he had to remind me that my career will always be there, but time with your baby isn't always there.
Sure. Absolutely. Robyn, so when you came back to South Africa, and I mean, it's difficult to here in London, you had your own practice, you know, you had those referral sources already, right? You were somewhat established. So South Africa, so how did you go about getting your first referrals? What did you do? Like the first 6 months are usually the hardest, right? To get your first few patients into the door. Did you bring the equipment from London? What were your first steps?
So we found premises. There was a shopping center in Bryanston, which is a very good area in Johannesburg, right in the middle of Johannesburg. It's close to Sandton Clinic, which would have been my main referring source. And my husband and I got this empty shell and we made this absolutely pristine, beautiful practice. Because I always said, if I'm going to be out of a hospital, it has to feel like home. So we made this incredibly beautiful practice. And my baby was 6 months old at the time, and I had no patients. So what I would do is I would leave him in the morning with his nanny, and I would go to work, and I would sit there all morning and not see a single patient. But I would sit and draw up my lists and research, and who were the surgeons, and where were the clinics, and who, you know, which specialty was this person in and that person in. And so, and then I started, once I'd done my research, I then started making appointments with these surgeons, and I went to meet them. And I'll tell you a funny story. I met Professor Biddulph, and when I walked into his practice to introduce myself as, you know, a potential hand therapist that he could refer to, he practically shooed me out of his practice, and he said, I do not work with hand therapists. They rip patients off. They charge 20,000 Rand to achieve 10 degrees of flexion. I don't need you. I do my own therapy and I make my own splints. Wow. And I thought, oh boy. Anyway, interesting end to the story is that he, about 2 years later, he referred a patient. When I got the referral, I thought this must be the worst case scenario. And I saw the patient twice. I saw, and he regained full range because of his Sims on him. He had a metacarpal, a punch injury, metacarpal fracture, and he had no range in his MCP joint for 6 months, and he'd had multiple physio. So I said, right, I'm going to apply a cast. I saw him at the beginning of December. I took it off at the end of December and he had a full fist. And Professor Biddulph phoned me and he said, where have you been my whole career? Wow. And I said, why did it take you 2 years to trust me? So we've got a great relationship. I mean, he's retired now and I see him around Johannesburg. But then I actually, it was actually also bad circumstances as well. My son was 8 months old and he was admitted to hospital with salmonella. And, wow. And he was sick. We didn't know he had salmonella poisoning. But I was at Sandton Clinic and I obviously checked in with him and I spent 7 nights there on a couch. And then I decided I'm going to go meet Dr. Patel. So I put him in the pram because at this point I could, you know, walk around the hospital with him. I put him in the pram. I went to meet Dr. Patel, but he had salmonella. So he was like so sick in those rooms. And Dr. Patel said, listen, I know you're dedicated to hand therapy, but come and see me when you're both okay. And I did. I went to see him. Matty got better and I went to see him. And I think that was really the turning point in my career in Johannesburg because we clicked. He is the most phenomenal microsurgeon and hand surgeon and human. He's just an incredible human. And we did beautiful work together. And we started Hand Consult SA together.
Yes, so leads me to my next question. So speaking of Hand Consult, so what is this platform? What is the purpose of Hand Consult, and how does Dr. Patel come in here? And just tell me the purpose of the Hand Consult, so other therapists could look into this and know, your kind of goals for this platform.
Yeah, so again, I had a vision and I had an idea because we were finding that patients were coming to see us far too late. They may have had an injury for 3 months. They may have not ever seen a hand surgeon or a hand therapist. So we realized that there was a desperate need to educate the public as your referral source, because that's how it works in South Africa. People self-refer. They don't have to have a referral but from a doctor to see.
So you have direct access, right? Very good. That's important.
Yeah. So and so I went to see him and I said, why don't we develop a social media platform, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and a website, and we become partners, hand surgery and therapy partners. And let's start educating. Let's develop #handjournal on a Monday. Let me come into theater with you and let's live stream from theater. And I said, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a photo shoot. And he just laughed at me and he said, what must I wear? And so I had an idea of how to build a brand. And I said, let's build a brand together. And also let's have a situation where if a patient comes to me and I see them first and I then refer them to you, you don't charge them an initial fee, and vice versa. And so we wanted to make it cost effective, we wanted to make it streamlined, and we wanted to make sure that patients felt they were very well looked after and that they were almost at a one-stop shop. You know, they were going to get the best surgery and therapy from a team. And we would outsource to other colleagues if it was beyond our scope. And that was really how it started. And we, from the very beginning, I just wanted to grow a brand and through logos and websites and beautiful photos and routine, and that's what we did.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. So honestly, I could definitely see the problem. Maybe not so much in the United States, although it is a problem in certain regions, but other parts of the world where people don't know there's a hand specialty and there's hand surgery as a specialty, and they allow to be operated by general surgeons that maybe not the best experts in certain fields of hand therapy, which is very complex. I'm sorry, hand surgeries, which was very complex, and the same thing goes for hand therapy. And in certain countries, like I come from Ukraine, and I believe last time I happened to meet the Minister of Health in Ukraine a couple of years ago, and I was told that there's only one occupational therapist in the whole country. So there's a lot of places in the world they don't have knowledge of hand therapy and how complex it is, and there's specialists that should be working with you on hand therapy. So, Robyn, so in terms of working together with Dr. Patel and having this interesting approach, I really like, so the client, the patient could save, cost on getting treatment by, having this kind of mutual referral. And excuse my ignorance, in South Africa, do you guys have insurance? Is there, or is it like a major kind of part of your, clinic where you have insurance patients, or majority of your patients are private pay patients? How does it work in South Africa?
Okay, so yes, I have a private practice and the majority of people have got private medical insurance. But Dr. Patel and I also worked with workmen's compensation patients.
Okay, sure.
These are people who are injured on duty, and because they were part of the WCA fund, they could come to us for surgery and therapy, and the fund paid. And actually, that is really where we got our best cases. That is where most trauma happens. And so, of course, for a microsurgeon, he just did incredible work. And so I was very, very fortunate to work with him.
Okay, Robyn, thank you for this. So now I want to talk about education a little bit. So I could definitely say that you're one of the influencers in hand therapy education, right? So I want to talk about your course, online course, and how did you establish yourself as an authority in the educational world for hand therapy? So, tell me when, it kind of became a thing, and how did you even uh, find this approach, and when did you realize it's really, really successful for your hand stiffness patients?
So in 2002, when I was working at Guy's Hospital, we received a lot of referrals for Dupuytren's patients. And those patients had been on a waiting list for like 18 weeks. So a lot of their fingers were kind of stuck into their palm. And so when I saw them post-op, they were extremely stiff. And I remember those patients coming to see me, and I would just exhale with exhaustion before I even started, because you had to sit there and use heat and ice and vibration and massage and modes and just really work this hand. And the effects were transient. They would, half an hour later, they would be stiff, and week after week after week, they would come back and they would have a stiff hand. And then I saw that Judy Colditz was hosting her Sims course in Dublin, or Derby. No, it was Derby. And I signed up for the course. I thought, this is going to be my solution. And I had met Judy in 1995 at Baragwanath Hospital. And so I spent 4 days with Judy learning, and I just got it. I completely grasped the concept. I came back and I started applying the technique, and I was really fortunate. Again, I had an incredible boss. She didn't hold me back. She bought me everything I needed, and she said, go ahead, learn. And so my first patient was actually a Lord of Westminster. I'll never forget. I applied the cast on his hand on a Friday, and I was petrified all weekend. I thought, oh God, I hope that he's going to be fine. And he came back on Monday and he said, this is magic. Look at my fingers, they are moving. It was that rapid. And so I started to work with Judy as my mentor, and she would mentor me with cases. And I started to publish, or I started to collect data and started to publish case series reports. And Judy, the first thing she said to me was, would you like to present with me on an international hand panel in Edinburgh? And there were going to be 500 people, and I thought, oh my goodness, this will be amazing. And so we did this 2-hour panel on the stiff hand in Edinburgh, and then we presented together to 1,000 people in Sydney at the ECHT conference. And I was on a panel there again, and it was actually on the PRP joint, and then again in Orlando, and then in Delhi. And so I just started traveling around the world, and just having Judy by my side and being able to present my work, and I started to publish my results. And I don't think I ever did this at the time. I didn't have the foresight to think, oh, I'm going to establish myself as an influencer or as somebody in the educational space. I didn't at all. I literally just wanted to share these results with the world, and I wanted to learn how to write. I wanted to learn how to become an author. And Judy was a phenomenal mentor. And then 3 years ago, she asked me to write or co-author the chapter of the stiff hand. And she had published the chapters of the stiff hand in the Rehab of the Hand and Upper Extremity textbook. So she had been the author, and Katie Pisano and I then took the reins, and we published that chapter. And so it happened, I suppose, coincidentally, or just over time, just from doing the work and repeatedly publishing and presenting. And then 2 years ago, I had this desire to go back and work in London. I just wanted to work there for 6 weeks. So I phoned my old boss, Liz, and I said, Liz, if I can come for 6 weeks, would you employ me? And she said, absolutely. And I managed to work it out that I could go and work in London for 6 weeks. And on the day that I arrived, the hand unit said to me, please, can you teach us how to cast? And so I did. I spent 6 weeks teaching them, and we actually casted 45 chronically stiff hands in 3 weeks.
Wow, that's a
And
huge amount. I've never heard of this.
I don't get that. I
45.
don't get that in 2 years. Yeah, in private practice, I just don't. So 45 hands in 3 weeks. And what was amazing about that was we had a huge department, 35 therapists, and I gave them a lecture, and then we just started working one case at a time. And these therapists started just popping up all over the place, going, have a stiff hand, have a stiff finger, have a stiff hand. And so we started to cast. There was plaster Paris all over this department, and we got the most incredible results. And that's when I knew I had to develop an online course, because I couldn't teach the theory and the practical in those 6 weeks. And what actually happened when I left was the therapist lost confidence in casting. And then I just knew, okay, develop it. So I came back, and within 6 months, I had developed and launched the CMMS online course.
Interesting. Wow, great story. So speaking of the course now, so how long is the course now for participants, and what does it consist of?
Okay, so just to let you know, just a little bit of background, I consulted experts before developing the course, and experts in adult education. I want to do, and also had this, I suppose, this kind of vision of having this online platform. So I wanted to have a platform that could be used across multiple devices, so therapists could learn in the clinic or at home on the computer, wherever they are, or if they're on the tube going to work or in their car, whatever. And so I consulted the experts, and so we structured it very, very carefully. And it consists of 45 lessons. And the lessons are a combination of animated videos, PowerPoint presentations, and there's a lot of footage of me casting, demonstrating all the cast designs, and actually teaching my clinical pearls as I was going along, all the tips and tricks and everything I've learned over the years. So I had a huge team. I had about 8 cameras in the room and a whole professional production team.
Wow.
Working with me in filming. It had to be professional. So then I then worked with an expert who helped me put this all together. We structured the lesson flow. We structured the learning objectives, and we then developed the fact sheets as well, so that you never actually give somebody more than 3 concepts per lesson. That's all an adult can absorb, 3 concepts. The lessons had to be short, they had to be fun, they had to be punctual, you had to give them the core information, and then branch out and provide the extra additional reading materials. So it's 24 hours of learning, which therapists do in their own time, and there's built-in Q&A. So they tested throughout the course, and again, according to the experts, what you're not wanting to test people to catch them out, you're wanting to embed knowledge. I want a therapist to go through the theory and have an absolute clarity as to what the theory is, why they are applying the cast, how they're applying the cast, and all of that knowledge. So there's that, and then also at the end they have to then take a case, a patient, and they've got 8 assessment uploads. So they have to film the patient's pattern of motion with a voiceover explaining the pattern of motion. They demonstrate their first cast. There are actually 3 or 4 casts that they have to make. They have to show the progress. They have to write up a 1-page report. And then more recently, through the mentorship program, these therapists are presenting their cases to all of the other students, and are now actually publishing. So we are now contributing to the research evidence to support CMMS, and we're actually going to be all pulling together across the globe, and we're going to be comparing traditional therapy to CMMS, and we want to prove that CMMS heals patients 70 to 80% faster than through traditional therapy. And I have a statistician, and we are going to do this, and that's going to be a nice big study.
Amazing. And Robyn, so the practical portion of the course is also online, right? So Who's
Yeah.
the mock patient? Who are they practicing on, like usually?
On their patients in the clinic. And so what happens is that I work very closely with every therapist that signs up. So they do the theory on their own, and then we assess the patients together over Zoom. And then when they cast the patient, I'm there, and I help direct them through the cast as well. And I also see them for their follow-up. So I see all of their patients about 4 to 6 times.
Oh, wow.
And they also have direct contact with me through WhatsApp, and they send me all the patients' videos, and they can call me at any time. And yeah, so I am closely mentoring these therapists, because I didn't do this last year in the first 6 months of the course, and I found that therapists were just left to their own devices. They were just in the dark. You need mentoring. And so since bringing in the actual one-on-one mentorship plus the group mentorship, we meet twice a month and we discuss challenging cases, or I bring on guest speakers, or I myself teach, and I keep teaching. And I use my patients. And because no two stiff hands are the same. And so every stiff hand is unique, and your approach is unique to every patient.
Absolutely.
And until you become an expert, it's very daunting, and it can be scary to cast that hand.
Absolutely.
So that's my big thing, is to serve my community.
Beautiful. I mean, I love the concept. I think it's amazing, and I can't wait for it to be published. So Robyn, and how long is the course again? How many weeks?
So they have 3 months to complete the course, but you know, they can get the theory done in 2 weeks easily. But then you need time with your patient, because casting is a slow process. If they don't get a patient, we extend their deadline. So that, you know, it's not about deadlines. I think you need to give someone a deadline, because then they kind of get it done. Otherwise it drags on. But we work with the patient, and we work at the patient's pace. They are the most important person in this whole thing. And actually all the patients give consent, and we are publishing their results on social media. But yes, it's 3 months because of the time it takes to get results.
Sure, absolutely. Makes sense. And what's the cost of the course?
It's $1,950 US.
Understood. Okay. Very affordable, if you ask me, for such, for 3 months. That's great. It's not a bad.
And that includes the group mentoring. It includes all the one-on-one sessions with me. They also get an ebook, so they have all the fact sheets, and we're starting a private Facebook group now as well. So we're building a nice community, and they're all supporting each other.
Interesting. So now that I understand, your involvement with different, platforms, with different, kind of things that you do throughout the day, right? We're running a clinic, you have the hand consult, you have the CMMS course. So how do you balance these things? How do you, when do you see patients? When do you, how do you find time to spend with your family, and, and find time to run the course?
Yeah. This year's been a real gift. Last year I found challenging, because I was living in one area, working in another, and my son was in a different area. And so I was spending about 3.5 hours a day in the car.
Wow.
And I was finding that really stressful to see a full clinic. I only see patients in the morning. So I was seeing, I was doing a full clinic in the morning, and then pretty much working at night, with mentoring and with, the developing, because it's with an online business, there's so much work to do all the time. And then COVID happened, and that was a blessing, in that we were all at home. My son was being homeschooled, my husband was working from home, and actually I left Bryanston, and I have opened up my practice at home. I have a whole separate section with 3 treatment rooms and a reception, which we got in February. So as luck would have it. And now I'm not spending 3.5 hours a day in the car. My husband took on the homeschooling. He just dived right into that. And of course, he does travel a lot. So when he's away, I was helping. And I'm just lucky to be flexible. But most of my clients are in America. So the time difference works on my side, because by the time I'm done with homeschooling and the clinic, everybody is waking up in America, and that's when, you know, we're getting online, and in the afternoons now, I'm treating patients. But what I have, I'm lucky I have a very supportive family and an incredibly understanding son. I mean, he's only 9, but he just really, he's so supportive of me. But you do have to have very good systems in place. You can't, if you don't have systems, you have chaos.
Sure.
And so I have made sure that I've invested a lot of the time in the structure and the systems so that they support me, because when you are multitasking, you're going to forget things, you're going to forget to book in a patient, you're going to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And so you've got to have those backup systems. And I think I've done quite well in doing that from the beginning. And now it's actually getting to the point where, what also has happened is they shut down elective surgeries. So my practice has been very quiet. All the surgeons are not operating. Patients are afraid to get therapy.
Is that still, even now in September?
Yeah, we are. Well, we were 5 weeks. We were 5 weeks behind all of you in the beginning.
Got it. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So, because we actually resumed, I think the surgeries were resumed in July, I believe. United States.
Okay.
All right. So
they're only open like next week. So it's been trauma, and you know, you had to apply to operate on a patient. So it's given me a chance to, and you might have seen it. I mean, I've just done webinar after webinar after webinar. I've just brought in the experts, and I've been able to grow this business this year because of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And so COVID has been a game changer for a lot of clinicians out there. And you know, some people find that it gave them some more time to explore other streams of revenue. But for yourself, so were you able to see patients online? You know, but was that a significant amount of patients, or your caseload dropped significantly because there was online and not in person?
Yeah, so I did. I saw a patient that had a very traumatic distal radius fracture, and we effectively, I treated quite a few patients online, but I actually still kept my clinic open throughout COVID as an essential service.
Okay.
But the patient I treated online was 75 years old. He had a quadruple bypass, and I didn't want to put him at risk in case, because actually, you know, you just never know. You don't want to end up, you know, giving your patient COVID. So I do have an online practice, but patients prefer to be seen in person, and I haven't grown it. I've done it out of necessity, but I have rather grown the education space.
Understood. Okay, makes total sense. I agree with you, and with especially hand therapy, the hands-on treatment is important sometimes, especially with utilizing the casting method that you use. And I mean, it's impossible to do virtually, and there's so much you could do online. So Robyn, and so I would like to talk about a few other things. So I'm just curious about South African healthcare system. So since you do see insurance patients as well, right? Or before COVID, let's talk about before COVID times, pre-COVID. So your documentation, so you have a documentation system that you utilize for your practice, and like, how does it work? You have like a practice management system? Yeah. And which system is this?
So I don't have a receptionist. I do everything myself, but again, the systems make it easy for me. So I have something called C Notes, and I have a system called Book Me. They are married. C Notes and Book Me are married in a way.
They integrated. They scheduled.
Integrated is a good word, yes. And so patients will book in. Well, I add the details to the Book Me system to give them the initial appointment, but all that data is pulled into their notes.
Got it.
Yeah, I've also created something called a Smart Link through Europe, which is where I built the platform. And this Smart Link is unbelievable, because what I've done is when a patient is referred to me, they get the Smart Link. They access that Smart Link, and there they go and do their COVID consent, their hand therapy consent. They watch a welcome video from me. And they fill out their medical and surgical history forms using something called JOT form. Now, JOT form is amazing, and JOT form is free to healthcare professionals until the end of December, so you can go wild on it. And so I developed all my forms on JOT form. They are HIPAA compliant. The patient uploads their pre-op notes, their images, the images from their accident, any scans that they have, absolutely everything gets uploaded in a very easy format. I then get a notification in my email. I then download those forms from JotNote into C Notes, where I can upload all those documents. And with my billing system as well, I then upload all of that information into the billing system. So actually, when the patient comes for their first appointment, I have everything, and I very quickly do their invoice. So by the time they've actually walked out the door, they have their invoice as well. I've just never seen the need to have a receptionist. I have rather diverted that expense to having virtual assistants. So my virtual assistants are, well, I've got 2 in Australia, and I have somebody here in Johannesburg who does all the Cartra work for me, and I have a graphic designer, and I have a web designer. So I've kind of directed those funds there because I feel that I need a highly skilled individual to support me in what I do, versus somebody just booking in patients and taking payments. So it's worked extremely well, and it's so quick and easy, and it's efficient, and it's compliant with all the regulations.
I love it. I mean, I could relate because one of my clinics, the hand therapy clinic, by the way, doesn't have a receptionist. It's a shared office space with internal medicine doctors. And we also use a remote assistant, so to speak, right? Because we're right next to the entrance door. So when the patient comes in, we could see him, and they're already checked off because everything goes through the cell phone, text messages with the patient, and they love it. We never, we don't have an issue really, with not having the front desk. So a very similar concept. And I love, actually, I'm going to look into the platforms that you mentioned. These are interesting. I've never heard of them here in the United States, but it sounds amazing. I mean, we do have something similar through our EMR system in HelloNote called Patient Portal. So they could log in, they get a HIPAA compliant. It's a HIPAA compliant login where, patients get an email verification. They log in, they have their own username and password, and to upload any documents that they want. They could put in the insurance information, and things like that. So, Robyn, again, as an entrepreneur, and do you run reports, through your system, or do you have any systems in place to run, business reports at all for your practice?
Yes, so the accounting practice software has, you can quickly generate all the reports that you need for your accountant. And I do my reports to my surgeons as well, but we actually communicate via WhatsApp a lot more because we just like the immediate. I send them videos and photos and images. I'm a communicator, so I'm always communicating with that surgeon. I'm just sorry, I forgot to mention, on the Smart Link, I have also put all of the patient educational videos and content in that link, and I direct them to where that is, so they are never left without access to their exercises, rather than looking for an information sheet and handing them an information sheet on a flex tendon or whatever. There are videos, and so it's really nicely organized. So that kind of helps. But yeah, I don't need very many more reports than what the accounting package can generate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I also, and then of course on the education side, I use something called Cartra, and that's your customer relations manager. And there, I mean, I couldn't live without Cartra. It is absolutely phenomenal.
Interesting. Okay, great. So I learned, something every day, different platforms that people use to running their business. Yeah. Very interesting. So, Robyn, and so what's the long-term goal for your private practice and for your online course? And what do you see hand therapy in the future?
Sure. Yeah, I think hand therapy, will grow in the virtual space. There's no doubt about it. I think that as practitioners, we will divert into that space and try and be better at it and be more efficient. And I can see already in my practice, I'm now filming assessments and filming treatments, and so that if I am treating virtually, I can bring that up onto the screen and help patients.
Mm-hmm.
I think that geographically we shouldn't have the constraints as to where you are in the world and who you can treat. I mean, I've treated patients in the States that obviously see me. I treat patients in Ghana. I treat patients all over the world because they want to have access to you. Where do I see my career? I will always have a clinical practice. I think that I'm a natural healer, and I certainly get my energy from healing patients. One of my big values is, you know, connecting people, and this is what I've done through the webinars and through, you know, bringing on colleagues, and to, you know, raise a platform for my other colleagues as well. Like, for example, with Alison and the Kinesiotape course that we are developing now. Oh, I'm sorry, I hope you don't hear the dog.
That's okay. That's okay.
Oh, sorry. And so, yeah, so I think that that's become, and I can see that I'm going to be doing more and more and more. I think especially because Sims is so established now, you know, and it's working, and I've become efficient at it. I've got the space to do more. So I really do see myself doing a lot more in the education space. And then I hope when COVID is lifted and well, it's kind of is better, I hope to travel and teach again. I hope to then maybe travel and run practical workshops and
Sure.
and meet. You know, I've made so many friends now with my, and everybody wants me to come to, you know, I've just had somebody yesterday saying, oh, please come to Portugal, and, you know, come to Australia. And yeah, so I think as time is going, I'm just making amazing friends as colleagues, you know, who are my students, and I would love to meet them all in person and do some different things.
That's amazing. I love the story. I think you accomplished a lot, and you know, thank you for bringing, you know, the casting concept to hand therapy, because like I said, you know, being in New York, I don't think anybody utilizes this concept, you know, in hand therapy. And I think it's great that therapists have an option to complete your, you know, course online, especially with the problem with pandemic right now, and, you know, inability to travel. And I think it gives them another perspective on treatment, you know, another approach. And, you know, I can't wait for your approach to be published. You know, and when you're in New York, you have another friend, you know.
Thank
So,
you. I do.
yeah. And Robyn, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for
It's a
today's
pleasure.
interview. Thank
I've
you so
loved
much.
chatting to you, and thank you for having me on your platform, and I wish you all the best. I think that what you're doing is amazing, because we want to hear from each other. We want to inspire each other, and, you know, as you say, you learn something new every day, and every clinician has something to share, and we should be pulling our resources so we don't reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Robyn. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank
We'll be in
you.
touch. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.